Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and a warm welcome to yet another edition of Talking Tales. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to welcome Harit Nagpal, who's the CEO of a content distribution platform, to our studios. Welcome, Harit.
Thank you very much.
Harit has just come out with a book, Adapt to Thrive, Not Just Survive. 10 disruptive business stories and 100 constructive questions. Harit, what kind of a combination is this? I just went through the layout. It's a beautifully done, colorful arrangement, but the words are slightly intriguing. What are you trying to arrive at when you say adapt?
So yeah, it is intriguing indeed because there are about 3 or 4 thought processes that have gone into constructing this compendium or whatever you may call it. I started off by saying that in about 4 decades of my career, I've encountered many situations where youngsters come to you and say, hey, time is changing, situation is different, the basics have changed. And I've always been very intrigued by the fact that how can basics change? Basics are called basics because they're basic.
You mean even in the field of management that you come from?
All the time.
Okay.
So much so that about a week ago, on a social media site, I put in a poll and I asked 2 options. I gave 2 options and I said, business basics stay constant with time. Second option, change with time. 83% of 780 respondents said they change with time. This is captured on a social media platform.
Okay.
So that's what we encounter every day. Okay, bhai, what you did in the past was different. I mean, this is like saying that the sun has started revolving around the earth, or the earth has again become flat, just because pollution has increased. So, so that's what I wanted to challenge and say, okay, guys, 100 years ago, how business was run and what were the basics of business are still the same basics. The only thing that has changed is circumstances. Circumstances because technology has changed, opportunities around us have changed. And that requires us to act differently around the same basics. But that doesn't mean that we have to start looking for new basics.
But Harit, let me interrupt you. This word called disruptive, it's in vogue these days. Has it always, you just mentioned 100 years, I mean, businesses were conducted in a similar way. Was the word disruption used maybe in some other form, say 50 years ago, 80 years ago as well?
I don't think disruption is something new. I think every generation has thought that they have disrupted something that their previous generation did. When the first motor car came, it was a disruption. When the first penicillin came, it was a disruption. Plastic was a disruption. Discovery of oil was a disruption. Aircraft was a disruption. So it is not something that has started yesterday. We've got new kinds of disruption and the pace of introduction of disruptions has gone up. I mean, you would have a disruption once in 10 years. Now you have a disruption many times a year. So the pace has gone up, but these are all disruptions. But you still have to, my thought here was that you still have to work with the same basics of branding, of market segmentation, of distribution, of pricing, of an organization culture.
You mean the four Ps stay the same?
4 Ps are still the 4 Ps. You may call them the 4 As or 4 Is or call them by any name. But those basics with which we used to run, I mean, I've been in the industry for 40 years. And I don't think the basics have changed. What I learned from Kotler 40 years ago while I was in college, it still holds in almost every situation that I go in. It's the circumstances that have changed. And I have to constantly adapt to the circumstances while keeping the basics intact. And that was the whole purpose of this book.
Just to, connect the book more with the audience, I would like to ask you one very specific question. We started using the word startups like never before. And would you call this term a disruption as well from established forms of businesses?
Well, we've coined the term startup. But when my grandfather started a business where he was buying something out of Andhra Pradesh and selling it in Rawalpindi, that was a startup. And that was in the year 1929. So, any business when it starts up is a startup. So, we've just created a new name for it.
But do you mean in those days as well, there were, angel investors and whatnot? I mean,
Well, they borrowed money from moneylenders. So that's, you could call them angel or whatever investors. They did not behave like angels from whatever I've seen in the Hindi movies of the past. But
coming to the book now, first of all, one can understand the meaning of the word adapt.
Right.
But is there something deeper to it, like an acronym or something? Or is there a particular, hard-hitting fact that I'm missing out at first sight?
so there are two ways you can adapt. That's the point I'm trying to make through the stories in the book. One is like the picture on the cover. This is the chameleon. It has survived for hundreds of thousands of years on the earth. Why? Because it changes its colors to blend in with the environment and therefore goes unnoticed. Nobody kills it, saves its life, moves on to the next environment where again it survives. Now that's like seeing, okay, I've been disrupted, let me cover my face or save my skin and cut my losses and move on. The positive way of looking at a disruption is an opportunity. And that's how human beings have grown, but chameleons are chameleons.
Wonderfully compared.
So, chameleons have not grown. A chameleon today is exactly like, is living a quality of life which its greatest of great grandfathers 50,000 years ago lived. Human beings are seeing changes every year, every 2 years in the quality of life they're leading. So, we actually look at a disruption as an opportunity to exploit the disruption to do something better.
Do something new.
Do something new. I've got an adversity. How do I convert it to an advantage for myself? Rather than saying, I've got an adversity, how do I cover my head and save the situation? So, adaptation for a human, especially in the world of business, you have to keep looking for disruptions as opportunities, not as threats. And that's what I've tried to do in the business stories that I've built here. So I've chosen 10 business basics.
From different parts of the world.
Yeah, and they're strangely situated in 10 different industries in 10 different parts of the world. One outside this world also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there is one situation which is based on a moon of Jupiter called Europa, where humans have gone, this is 80 years from now, where humans have gone and colonized that moon. And now we're trying to do distribution there of goods like we do in India.
Okay.
So it's fictional. But the purpose of having 10 different industries in 10 different countries or geographies is that both stupidity and genius are not localized. They're universal. So you can't say that this country is stupid or this country is intelligent. We are all equally stupid and equally intelligent. We make the same mistakes and we make the same genius moves.
But tell me, are all stories fiction? Or it's a combination of, you heard something somewhere which actually happened and then you kind of change the character?
I can almost say with confidence that almost every situation that I've described here in the stories, I have either experienced personally or have seen it happen in front of me.
Okay.
Each genius and each stupidity that's been divided. But I've tried to create a fictional, situation just to entice the user. And the reason for that is, when I started to write this book, my first thought was, okay, let me write on these 10 subjects, start a subject, build a 2x2 matrix, and write 5,000 words. And I said, only my relatives and friends will buy it and keep it on the mantelpiece without even reading it. Because who wants to have another author coming and preaching to you? And the example that I used there was that when I was growing up, I hated milk. My mother wanted me to drink milk. And I grew up in Delhi. So in summer, she would give me cold milk with ruh afza in it. And in winter, she would give me hot milk with hot chocolate in it. And it was the chocolate and the ruh afza that made me open my mouth. And in the process, milk went into my mouth and calcium got into my body. Now, if you use the same logic, instead of preaching, if I start telling a story to a person, a fictional story, sitting in some faraway land, in a fictional industry or in a fictional situation, the mind opens.
Okay.
And when the mind opens, the wisdom seeps in the garb of the story. And some calcium will get retained inside. So that was the only reason why I chose fiction, because it just makes it interesting.
Your statement makes me feel geniuses have a lot of common sense to begin with.
Well, it's only about common sense, frankly.
Tell me, beyond Europa, when you talk of other stories in this book, have you chosen real-time locations as well?
Everything is real time.
Okay.
Everything is in today's context. It is nothing is 100 years ago.
Okay.
It is almost like, I mean, it may have started 5 years ago, and then we come to today and say, okay, what's happening today? But it's like, it's a 3, 4, 5 year domain, really.
So I suspect it must be kind of derived from your international travel or your stay elsewhere and experiences.
So of the 10 stories that the planet that I'm talking about, I've not been there, obviously. The other 9 countries that I'm talking about in this, I've referred to in this. I've probably been to about 5 of them, and I've not been to 4 of them. So it was fun, first of all, to research about the industries as to if I've got to build a context of a particular industry, say fintech or air conditioning or whatever. I've not been a part of those industries, despite having been in 6 industries in my life. So it was first fun to research about that industry as to what are the pieces. And then there are 4 or 5 countries out of this which I have not put my foot into. But I have to now set the story in that country. So I need to know the culture of that place. I need to know the names of cities, names of roads, climatic conditions, how people talk, what are the dishes out there and stuff like that. So it was fun researching those countries and those industries as I went along. So that is, I have to, as an author, I have to enjoy it also.
Harit, let's come to the basics now. You are the CEO of
a content distribution platform.
Content distribution platform. I don't know how busy you are, but I mean, my horse sense says that you work 24 hours a day.
Well, almost.
So it's so difficult to understand from that kind of hectic schedule and growth charts and whatever pressures you must be undergoing, coming out with a creative book that speaks of a lot of extra stamina. How did this happen?
I was daunted by it. To tell you frankly, I was daunted by it. The process started when the day the lockdown was declared. And I remember somebody told me that, 21 days, there's no movement going out of the house. And we didn't even have the Zooms and the Microsoft Teams and stuff like that those days. So we didn't know how business will happen. And somebody said, whatever you thought in your life that you wanted to do but could not, this is the time you can start experimenting with it.
Okay.
So I sat down and started this book then. I wrote the blueprint of the first story. And in those 21 days, probably 1.5 stories got written as such. And then we forgot about it because Zoom calls happened and work started from remote and we were all busy in the work. 1.5 years, 2 years, this thing was forgotten. And then I met with the publisher and I sent these two to her. And I said, if you like the format, then I will write another 8 stories. Otherwise, I'm not wasting my time. So she loved the format. She said, I like the format. It's very different from what has been written about, how business has been written about in the past. So why didn't you do it? We'll publish it.
Oh.
So I said, now I will spend time. And, if you ask me, where did I write these? They were written in 2 situations. Late nights and long flights.
Oh.
So, you have to burn the extra time. Once everything is done in the night and everybody's gone to sleep, you sit down and start typing something, first draft, second draft, third draft to get it better. Or when you have a 7, 8, 9 hour flight and you have nothing to do and you're disconnected with the rest of the world, you open a laptop and start punching in something.
But, I mean, aren't you old school, pen and paper?
I am not anymore. I adapt.
Okay. The title of your book.
Yeah.
My connection with MBA is limited to 35 years ago, 37 years ago, flunking the IIM exam. Of course, I must have cleared one of those regional ones, but could never kind of. So my level of curiosity would be higher than, say, your counterpart sitting here. There's a lot of talk about entrepreneurship with various factors thrown in. One is curious to know, when an idea germs in the brain, how does it actually fructify? I mean, it needs a lot of money, and there must be lenders, there must be collaterals, and there must be people who are not willing to lend you money. We also discussed angel investors. I mean, why would an angel investor deposit money with you as a loan? What if you run away? So these are basic questions. Any student who's watching us right now may have these questions in mind as well. Maybe not from the field of marketing and finance, but other fields maybe. So how do you explain that to a youngster?
So first of all, I am of a belief that you don't have to be an MBA to do business, to start with. MBA is just a filtering mechanism. That, okay, there are 50,000 people who applied, I've got 60 seats, we will take 60 who do the best. And the testing mechanism has got nothing to do with the business, because people who are entering into an MBA have not studied business or have not done business. So you test them on basic aptitude and not on business skills. And then the people who have the aptitude are taken into a business school to go further. So it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody who has to do business has to do an MBA. And I've come across great businessmen who've not done an MBA. we all know of them. People, they are dropouts from college, basic college also. So if you have the acumen, to me it's about problem solving. How do you approach a problem? So if you have a problem, there are two ways to solve it. Start working on all its aspects at the same time and end up nowhere. Or try and lay the problem on the table, break it up into various parts, and solve one part at a time. Now that's something that is not taught in an MBA. An MBA will teach you the basics of a business. What is marketing? What is customer segmentation? What is branding? What is distribution? What is statistics? What is culture? What is organization psychology? These kinds of things. So if you've got to run an organization in the long run, these are the basics you need to know. Armed with that, you can't start running a business. To that, you have to add experience of working with each of these basics. So again, it boils back down to, do you know the basics well? If you do not know the basics well, then you don't know what you're experimenting with, what you are sharpening, what you are adding value to. Are you just kicking in the air, or are you kicking with a purpose?
Allow me to take you out of your CEO's chamber for a while. When you look at either the national backdrop or the international backdrop as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, and if you, in your mind, if you try to draw a trajectory of the, say, last 10 years or maybe 15 years or 20 years, how do you think people have adapted themselves to what is expected in the spirit of entrepreneurship? How have they changed, or have they not changed much?
I think people have adapted a lot, because I can speak for myself. When I finished my college and started to work, we did not even have computers. We did not have email. There was no Google. We didn't even have couriers. We had telexes.
Yeah.
We had a little Casio calculator on which everything was done. If your company had 250 stock keeping units and 6 godowns that you were in charge of, then you had to spend a whole day with 6 sheets trying to figure out of these 250 things, how do I allocate for the next 3 months where? Today, we are in artificial intelligence, and in between you've had exposure to email and Google and air travel. Air travel was rare. And couriers. I mean, if I had to know something, I had to go and study, go into a library or borrow a book from the library and read about 5-6 books to know about it. Today, I just have to type the name and
Everything
I get
is
15 references, and it takes me about 20 minutes to know exactly what I want to know. Something that I took about 15 days. Now, it is the same human being who never had Google in college, who never had email in college, who never had computer in college, who never had access to air travel or going to another country and learning about it in college. We've grown. Like you said, old school man, why are you typing? Why aren't you? I learned to type. In fact, when we passed out of school, my final thesis was given to somebody to type. We could not type it ourselves. We did not know how to work on a typewriter. I had written it by hand and given it to somebody, and he typed it, bound it, and gave it a cover and handed it to me and charged me some 100 rupees for it that time. Today we type everything ourselves. Who taught us the ASDFG semicolon LKGH? Nobody taught us. We learned by ourselves. So we adapt. Humans are amazing adapters. I mean, for example, when we passed out of college, we didn't have computers. Suddenly, 15-20 years down the line, PCs, desktops came in, then laptops came in, and then suddenly there came an IT department in the company, which was headed by a person who was my vintage. And my question to him always used to be, Bhai, when we passed out of college, there were no computers. Where did you learn IT? To head the IT function. We adapt.
But when you look at, people from the younger generation, even in your own office, do you find a systemic change in their attitudes and aptitudes, both?
Yes, absolutely. If we were adapting, they are adapting faster because the world around them is changing at a faster pace than it was changing around us. So they have no choice. They are learning new things every day. By the time they get used to one form of a plug, a new plug is invented. The USB to C has taken like a couple of years. While I was still getting used to how to insert the USB plug into the socket, came the C type of plug. Now, tomorrow a D type or an E type or F type will come, and these kids will be at it faster than us.
Coming back to your book, Adapt, Harit, there are 10 stories for somebody who is totally uninitiated, such as I. Which one would you recommend? Which story as the first?
So, I thought about this and I said, this is a business book. What about non-business people? And as happens when you write a book and you have friends who are in different parts, you just send them a link and say, hey, my book is come, and they're excited and they go and order it. Now, just yesterday, the book was released about 10 days ago. Got to people's homes about 4 days ago. And just yesterday, somebody who went with me to school, is a social scientist, has been a professor in a school for social science, laid her hand on this book and was very keen to read, Bhai, what did I write? And her text message that came to me last night was, I read through the stories. Even a person who has no inkling of business could sense what you were trying to say. because the format is storytelling. And in at least 3 of the stories, I found the questions which I can borrow from to use in my behavioral science class. So the attempt was to simplify or humanize, I would say, while writing this story.
That would be a multidisciplinary.
Yeah, so that you create a situation. Most explanations have been made in the book through a story which revolves around human behavior and human angles and human interactions. Or a father and a son, or a father has to teach the son what branding is about and how good branding is. He's actually using an example of how he decides who are the friends he can trust and who are the friends he can't trust. And once the son explains, okay, I don't trust this person, but I trust this person. He says, so what did he do to make you trust him? And what did he do that you don't trust him? And when he explains, he says, brands are exactly like that. So I'm just giving an example. So even if you are from the outside the world of business, the attempt was that you should be able to understand it. It is written in such a humane or human way.
Harit, our conversation will be incomplete, I feel, if I don't ask you about something, at least about your area of work. And because it has contemporary elements as well, I thought your answer could come across as interesting. One is curious to know. We keep on hearing that OTT is gaining traction. Now, to my mind, I mean, I am confused between regular television watching and OTT watching. And then you say that, no, we are into this and this as well. So where are these common and where do they separate? These two
So
mediums?
why do you want to limit yourself to TV and OTT? In the last 40 years, I started by selling cosmetics. Then I got into the area of cooking oils. Then I started selling colas. And then I got into clothing. And then I was into communication through telecom. And now I'm into content. Strangely, 6 C's. Right? And now you can say that you did not know the technology of most of these companies or these businesses. Then how are you leading these businesses or at least at senior positions in these businesses? The simple answer to that is keep an eye on the customer. Don't be a technology in search of a customer. Keep an eye on the customer, understand his requirements, and then go to technology and ask them to enable the solving of the problem. And that's the mantra that we followed. So when we were in the business of television and we were buying content in wholesale from producers of content, creating that into small packets of 200 and 300 rupees and selling them as 300 rupee packets, different for different people. Somebody wants a larger packet, somebody wants this genre, somebody wants that language, somebody can afford only 300, somebody says, I want to see everything, don't ask me how much money it is, here is the check on the table. So we have all sorts of customers, and that's what we were doing. And when OTT happened, we said one way to look at it was, we are ruined because we are in television. If my television customer goes to OTT, then what will happen? Now, it's a different story that there are 14 crore homes which have still to buy their first TV. So the runway is very long out there. But then we said if there was a role that we played in the television world, it's the same role we can play here also, because what did we do there? We made content discovery easy. A person switches on the TV in the evening. Our job was to take him to the channel he wants to watch in 5 seconds flat. So we created an interface where he pressed guide. He pressed the genre he wanted to go to, which is entertainment. He pressed the language that he wants speaks, which is Malayalam. And he gets the 11 channels that come in Malayalam entertainment. He clicks on that, the one he wants to watch. And after 600 channels that he has at his command, he can get to the channel he wants to watch in 5 seconds flat. And we said OTT has probably 30 apps and tomorrow there'll be 60 apps. And each has 1 million pieces of content each. How does he get to that quickly? And we said the principles remain the same. People still want to watch the genre that they like in the language that they want. If you are a Malayali speaking person and you like romance or action or drama, then you will want Malayali drama. So the moment I know these two things, I can pull out the 27 apps that you subscribe to. I can pull out Malayalam drama from these 27 apps and put them onto one rail. Now that's what we went to technology for as a problem. And we said, I want to solve for that. And they gave us a solve for it. It took about a year to give us a solve. And we created Binge, which is probably the best OTT content aggregation and content discovery platform in the world at this point in time. There is nobody equivalent to that. So you understand the customer's problem in the situation. And tomorrow, if another technology comes, I mean, there was a TV earlier, and then there is OTT, and now there is another TTT or whatever that comes. We'll find our way as to what the customer's problem is, use technology to solve it, go with the solution to them. And that's what we've been doing, and the business has been doing all their lives. Every business.
Harit, we discussed your book, Adapt. We discussed what you do. What remains now is, taking you out of office and knowing you slightly as more as a human being who is not the CEO. What is he beyond that?
I'm constantly watching people. I'm constantly watching people. How do they behave? What makes them tick? What doesn't make them tick? What are their problems? What are the issues they have in life? What are they struggling with? And the mind is constantly working on, okay, how do you talk to them so they listen? And then they understand. What are the problems they're facing? Like, for example, when they go to the bank, what are the problems they face? When they travel in a metro, what problems do they face? When they have a motorcycle that they have, what are the problems they face with it? And we may be giving them the same problems. And our ability to pick solutions from other industries and replicate those solutions, something that's best practices that somebody's followed, and bring it back to your business, gives you a kick, gives you a joy. And that's what you do. The whole purpose of, looking outside the window when you're traveling in the bus and observing people is what I love doing.
Harit, it was, for me at least, it was, and it must have been for other people as well, a masterclass of sorts to interact with somebody who has, beyond all your businesses, who has studied human nature so much. Thank you very much for sparing time for our audience.
And thank you so much for the questions you asked. It made me think. It made me think, really. These answers are not prepared. I got in touch with myself, a part of myself which I hadn't in the past. And thank you.
I close with a small compliment to you. You have a broadcaster's voice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.